Here, on Jagannath, in the top right hand corner, it's the red Zerg. Makes a noise for SERRAL. And in the opposite corner instead, in the blue, it's the Protoss player, Neeb. Two legends of their own regions fighting against each other. Really difficult to predict any outcome between two players of these skill level. Both of them really has shown times and times again in the past how strong they can be, and we can already see SERRAL going for something mostly defensive, I'd say, here in Jagannath. Not something you would expect any kind of cheese of. It's of course the early spawning pool. Looks like it's just a macro spawning pool first to prevent any aggro coming from Neeb, of course. You can see the hatch being placed at a fairly standard timing. Neeb probably should know something is up. But I don't think he does really mind too much. He's gonna go for a Cybercore first and just call it a day. We don't see any defensive precautions like a Zealot first. Nothing that will actually threaten his pylon too much. SERRAL trying to catch the probe. It's gonna take a little bit of damage at least before it gets back home. I don't think it's like a priority for SERRAL to get that probe, but it's far better to get on top of this pylon. It looks like SERRAL will be content with just some scouting information, sending Zerglings in, getting to see maybe even what is going to be the first tech structure from the Protoss. Always a very good scouting information. Heading on the pylon, of course, second priority. Just to scare Neeb a little bit. There's already an Adept out. There's not really much that can threaten this Protoss player at this stage. As I was saying, this is not an aggressive build coming from SERRAL. Interesting scouting over here. Twilight Council is going to be immediately seen by SERRAL soon after being dropped. This could very easily be a robo follow-up. Here it comes. SERRAL didn't see this, but it's almost certain that he knows that this is up. It's probably going to be some kind of resonating glaze build. Of course, Jagannath is a very big map. These kind of builds tend to lose a little bit of momentum due to the sheer size of the map, and Adept trying to catch some scouting information in the natural of SERRAL as well. Check gas saturation, maybe check for a lair. That of course is not up this early in the game. A third archery is incoming indeed for SERRAL. And you see also the Roach Warren being immediately dropped by the Zerg player, already making up its mind to face this resonating glaze build. War Prism is on the way. SERRAL sending quite a fair amount of Zerglings through the map already. Maybe to catch the move out from Neeb. Or maybe just to get some amount of pressure, forcing Neeb to lose some time, some momentum of course. So his build. Resonating Glaze almost done. But the first few roaches already are starting to hatch for SERRAL. 10 links, 4 roaches on the way. There's already quite a fair amount of quick spread as well, as you can see. With Neeb approaching, shouldn't be too much time before SERRAL can move his units to better position. First Shade, of course, is going to cancel. A lot of Adepts are in the making now. And they're starting to move out, checking for more Crypt Tumors. Of course, the Shades can go through, but lots and lots of units already falling to the piles. And the Shades will complete, but their numbers is not even remotely as high as Neeb would have wanted them to be. Queens blocking the way, the drones are getting back to mining, only 2 of them are going to fall. A total disaster for Neeb. Not even getting a lot of Zerglings with these. Alaris incoming, but you can see SERRAL already starting to move out over here. It's a lot of Zerglings threatening these Nexus over here. This is most certainly going to be a cancel. There's not enough units to defend this. A cancel, here it comes. It's a lot of sentries. A lot of Adepts in the way. Of course, Defender's Advantage is the only thing scaring SERRAL away. Looks like a pause was issued. You can see SERRAL kind of relentlessly looking for a chance to strike again. And here comes another cancel on the Nexus. SERRAL getting an insane advantage this early in the game. Another Nexus was dropped by the Protoss player. This time he's looking to defend this a little bit more intensely. The connecting pylon was there to have the possibility to warp in some units a little bit more aggressively to defend that base. On the other side, we see SERRAL completing his lair, getting a fair amount of upgrades. The most important one, of course, being +1 missile and reconstitutional Glial. While these Zerglings are still looking for a little bit more damage. Of course, this Nexus is not going to be cancelled again. It looks like Neeb has stabilized. But SERRAL is quite a bit ahead at this stage. Blink is on the way. We don't see any real tech progress coming from Neeb, really. Like at this stage, you will want to see some Templar Archives, Dark Shrine, maybe RoboBay or Stargate, or something to the likes of it. But Neeb is clearing, counting a lot on his just Gateway army. And he's not really finding any leverage of it. Probably wants to go for some kind of a lane. This is a fairly decent army. Blink is almost down, plus 2 ground weapons on the way. SERRAL setting up a counter-attack. In the meanwhile, there's a photon cannon to scare the Zerglings away. While the main army of Neeb is moving out, catching some Crypt Tumors on their way in. The Shades trying to find a way to get some damage. Of course, they're going to be cancelled. The whole army of SERRAL was waiting for that moment. Oh, the army of Neeb may find itself in a little bit of a sandwich in between the forces of SERRAL. Meanwhile, an Overseer catching some scouting information of here. Neeb finding some difficulties escaping from the clutches of the Zerg armies that SERRAL has spread through the map. Still, these Zerglings being so obnoxious towards Neeb, forcing him to keep a lot of units in position. Meanwhile, Banelings morphing in here on the right. That's a real scare maneuver, even without upgrades. These Banelings can deal some serious damage. SERRAL waiting for the moment to send them in, while Neeb looking for a move out himself. The Banelings are moving in. The Banelings are moving in slowly but surely. They make their way in. Meanwhile, the 2 main armies clashing. The Banelings are catching on top of the photon cannons, not finding a lot of damage themselves. Couple drones caught out by some Adepts, but the army of SERRAL is in a very good position to face the one of Neeb. Finally, we see some tech coming from the Protoss player. It's going to be in the form of Disruptors, but SERRAL has almost full vision of what is about to come. This Warp Prism may find a way in, unscouted, and get a lot of damage, but SERRAL sending his full might back home to deal with his Banelings collapsing on top of it. Neeb getting a 4th base, while a lot of Stalkers are back home to defend against some more Banelings kind of counterattacks. Looks like SERRAL is going for a decisive maneuver. His army is fairly decent. Look at the amount of Ravagers setting up a sandwich again, only to disrupt us out. They're trying to get the best disruption Novas they can. This year one is going to completely whiff. Neeb desperately blinking backwards, while the rest of the army of SERRAL is clashing on the fur base of the Protoss. 15 probes and counting are going to go down, and SERRAL takes game number 1 of the series. On Oxide, for the second series, here in the bottom left-hand corner, the Red Zerg is currently spawning. He needs one more victory to clutch the series. Is he going to make it? It is SERRAL. And in the opposite corner, the best North American player, probably of all times. In the blue, it's the Protoss, Neeb. Two players who have clashed against each other a fair amount, really. You've seen in game number 1 already, both of them trying to find some weaknesses in the game plan of their opponents. SERRAL not going to go for the early pull this time. He's going to get immediately an archery, going for a little bit more standard of an opener. Just an edge gas pull kind of opener. Not going to drop down any safety spawning pulls in the early game, which is kind of weird considering Oxide is much shorter compared to Jagannatha. In the end, it's probably more a matter of how many times they faced each other and what are the usual builds that Neeb shows on different maps. And it looks like SERRAL was afraid of something on Jagannatha, which is not scaring him here on Oxide. Which is already a decent point for him to go for a hatch gas pull without any safety early pull this time around. Getting an overload for the map, of course, just for scouting information. But the most important thing is still going to be Neeb's first tech structure. We've seen him go for a resonating glaive timing attack in the first game of this series. Didn't really work out. Actually worked out horribly for the Protoss player. Yeah. Digging his own grave, it was with I think it was only 3 adepts completing their shade into the natural of SERRAL. All of the others were completely annihilated by a full surround of Zerglings and a lot of Ravager Biles raining down from the sky. And now it really looks like it wants to switch things around with a Stargate opener instead. One of the most proactive openers we've seen in quite a while. It's really looking to be the best way to play the matchup. It used to be a very aggressive kind of way to play in this matchup. Something that kind of at a time where how much damage you were supposed to get, while still having the Oracle to defend against any rushes. But this time around, with the Void Ray being such a strong unit compared to the past, it's looking to be a fairly strong defensive opener, like probably taking the place of what the old Robo opener was, the old Archon drop, which is still a fairly easy build. It's just not as strong and safe against the current meta, consisting mostly of Roach Ravager lean beings. Or even just Roach Ravager, really. Just the way to play the matchup right now. It looks like Neeb is going to drop a fairly early third base alongside his Oracle still being the scare maneuver. His second Oracle is on the way, while the first one is making his way through the map. Really looks like SERRAL had his queen in position to deal with it. Not much that can actually scare him right now. Roach Warren being dropped as well. Neeb looking to find some scouting information. Meanwhile, the Adepts trying to shade in. Will find a crit tumor, or maybe not. Or shading away. Second Oracle making its way through the map as well. A few links are actually going to pass unscouted through the army of Neeb and get quite a fair amount of scouting information. Not much to be seen. Atala Council is in the main. Meanwhile, Neeb looking for damage over here. Revelation being dropped while the Adepts get on top of the crit tumors. Oh, they may find themselves a little bit trapped. 4 Adepts are already out over here. Queen's in position to scare them away and drop the tumors. Another 2 Adepts have already reached this position. Zerglings finally cleared by the sentries. The other side though. Neeb setting up something. A little bit of aggression. Another Revelation being dropped over here. While the Adepts Shades trying to get in the natural. Will they complete? It looks like they won't. And the Adepts will be indeed scared away by the Queens. Beautiful crit spread once again by SERRAL, who's gonna get a lair right now and start Goliath Reconstitution to move around with his roaches a little bit more easily. A drone with pass unscouted over here, trying to hide desperately from the army of Neeb. Poor little thing. That's fighting on Queens. Not a fight you usually want to take, especially Queens with this much energy. They will couple the shade here in the natural. Gonna find a lot of scout information. Oracle Passer beams dealing absurd amounts of damage. Neeb not really finding any economical damage though. Only some scouting and a Queen. And a couple of Zerglings, of course, as well. Meanwhile, early infestation pit coming from the Zer player. Stasis Ward is going to get only a single drone. We don't see the Nidus yet, but this early of an infestation pit can only mean one thing. It's going to be Swarmers, I think, guys. +1 missile attack already done. A fair amount of roaches already on the way to bulk it up. And Overlords dropping one after the other. 5 Swarmers on the way for SERRAL. Meanwhile, Neeb is going to get some serious amount of scouting information. These Alucinate Phoenixes may get over the infestation pit, and they sure will. Neeb clicks on it as well, just to confirm that his eyes are not deceiving him. And it's going to be 10 Swarmers on the way for the Zer player. Roaches and Ravagers to bulk it up. Here comes the Nidus Network in the third base. Oh boy, I do love myself some Swarmers in a Nidus play. Meanwhile, Roaches and Ravagers trying to scare away the army of Neeb. That's a huge amount of Protoss Stalkers trying to make a dent in the defenses of SERRAL. A lot of quick spread all over the map for the Zer player. Meanwhile, Lucas are gonna find themselves a Nexus over here. Stasis Ward is gonna catch quite a lot of them. This is not going to be a cancel. Meanwhile, Neeb trying to get a wraparound with his beautiful Storka play. Nidus Boom detected on the top left. Oh my goodness. Lucas making a way over here. Already a lot of defenses in this third base from Neeb. Meanwhile, Swarmers are gonna find themselves a way to escape and to reposition on the right. Oh, that's a lot of Ravager piles raining down on top of the one pylon. That's a lot of Stalkers. Being a serious scare element bleeding forward on the army of SERRAL. Lots and lots of roaches. They're gonna find themselves trapped away. Oh, the Swarmers flank. Here comes the Lucas. Oh, they're very slow though. They will not get us to run, but they will get a Nexus. Meanwhile, Neeb doesn't really care about it, stopping his creep spread. But this fourth phase of Neeb is going to go down, and the Swarmers already finding some damage. Neeb actually pretty heavily supply blocked. He's gonna drop down 4 more pylons. Meanwhile, the army of the Protoss player trying to find a way to make a dent through the defenses of the third base of SERRAL. 12 links, 3 Ravagers, and missile attack 2 on the production tab of the Zer player. Meanwhile, more and more Nidus networks being spread throughout the map. Meanwhile, SERRAL trying to catch on top of the Stalker army. He's gonna get quite a lot of damage done. Meanwhile, the Stalker is gonna set up a surround on the top left. Locust Wave finding a Nexus in the third base of Neeblet. Lots of Locusts trying to get on top of it. Of course, not much can be taken aside. These actually 7 probes, quite a decent amount of probes killed. Meanwhile, Neeb desperately trying to find some damage. Desperately trying to chunk down the army of SERRAL without really managing to do much. Nidus Worm is going to be spotted on the right and one on the left, but there's another hiding on the low ground. And SERRAL is gonna drop another one in the top leftmost corner of the map. Missile, melee attack actually in the making for SERRAL. Lots and lots of Locusts ready to rain down on the third base of Neeb. There's not much to defend it this time, and that's a lot of Locusts getting on the ground. This is a dead Nexus for Neeb, who's now on a 2-base economy with the 2 armies clashing here in the middle of the map. Banelings do not have Baneling speed yet researched. Oh, that's a beautiful Disruption Nova connecting on the army of SERRAL, who's actually maxed out now. 40 more Zerglings on the way. Actually, a Nidus Worm surround set up by SERRAL with lots and lots of Zerglings actually coming over here at the first base of Neeb. Well, the one that is now the third, but it was supposed to be the fourth. So the fourth. That's how my mind works right now, guys. Looks like these oracles still finding quite a little bit of damage, still finding a lot of scouting information. Oh, that one oracle may have read a little bit too far though. Centrifugal hooks halfway through for SERRAL to give his Banelings a little bit of speed. That's a lot of Nidus Worms all over the map. Warp Prism actually getting some scouting information over here on the left. But Neeb is seriously all leaning on the Stalker Disruptors army. So SERRAL kind of stopped with the Nidus Worm Swarmos play. That's an absurd amount of Banelings. How many Banelings is this? 67. Whatever, SERRAL. You do you. But once they become fast boys, these Disruptors may be in danger, and they're soon to be Banelings rolling through, and here they come. Rolling inside everything they can, and they will get so much damage on top of the army of Neeb. Stalkers may tank a lot of damage, but Disruptors, they sure don't. And even if these Stalkers have survived in a fairly large amount, they still do not have a lot of health to face the Roaches with +2 that SERRAL has in his main army. Meanwhile, a lot of Zerglings trying to get around. Another Nidus Worm over here, and another in the third base of Neeb is going to be dropped. Lots of Locusts raining down from the sky. Neeb needs to send his full might back home to stop these Locusts and kill the Nidus Worm as well. SERRAL sending Lings on the left, trying to get even more map control. 13 minutes, and it looks like Crypt Tumors are not going to stop anytime soon. Covering off the map is the creep of the Zer player. Only Stalkers and Disruptors are the play of Neeb. Another real transition out of this is not finding the damage onto the army of SERRAL, is not managing to defend his economy the way he will want it to. His Purification Nova is going to get one of the Disruptors. Meanwhile, the Banelings rolling through, trying to get on top of the Stalkers. Beautiful Blink Micro by Neeb, as well as the Shield Battery overcharge is going to keep the army of the Protoss alive. Banelings running through. Meanwhile, on the top left, Locust got another Nexus. The main armies are clashing in need. A Nidus Worm got over here, and these Nexus recently got taken by the Locust. More and more Banelings in the making for SERRAL. How does he find this much gas? My goodness. I know a lot of Stalkers in the army of Neeb right now. The Baneling's trying to get us around. There's a Warp Prism to reinforce his position. It looks like this might be the desperate last stand of Neeb. The army of SERRAL catching up. The last Disruptors being taken. Oracle activating Pulsar Beam to try and take the Ravagers of SERRAL. Neeb will manage to escape to live for another day, but this is probably another dead Nexus. No shield party overcharge to support the health and shields of this Nexus. And Neeb again on a 2-base economy. Again, SERRAL finding damage, sending Zerglings in. He always finds a way. And these Zerglings might not have enough DPS to force a cancel. Or maybe they do, maybe they do. It's not a cancel, it's a kill. GG gets gold and SERRAL takes game number 2 of the series.